Southern California, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. We have quite the busy show for you all today, as we have a lot going on in Southern California, such as the Chargers and the Rams getting Week 1 victories. Never a doubt, as the Rams rolled to victory while the Chargers kind of had to grind it out, but Justin Herbert was phenomenal. And USC unfortunately took one on the chin against Stanford, but 2 days after, USC fired Clay Helton. Never thought I'd see the day that would happen. Will the Trojans be able to get back on track, or is it too little too late courtesy of the Cardinal? And then LAFC, how about them? Are they back on track? They have won 3 in a row, and they are back in the playoff hunt. Maybe this could be the start of something special. Maybe. And then the Galaxy are still in the right direction. They're tying most of their matches. Can they maybe move out of 4th place? Perhaps. And the Dodgers are playoff bound, as they will be defending their World Series crown. But who will they be able to face, and where will they be finishing? And the Padres are on life support in terms of the playoffs, but they still have a chance. All that and more here on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And what is good, party people? Thank you all for tuning in to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, episode 59. I appreciate you all tuning in. And without any further delay, let us get on into the Southern California sports action. But first, we have a word from our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Background Check International Businesses. Are you looking to background check a new hire on? Let Kit Fremen take care of that for you. Kit founded and has managed Background Check International since 1994 and is here to help you with the screening process. Contact Kit and let him help make the hiring process that much easier. Warning, however, this business is used for professional background checks and not the use of any crimes such as identity theft or illegal activity. You could follow Background Check International Businesses on Facebook by going to the search bar and typing in the word Background Check and then International-BCI. And they're also available on their own website, www.bcint.com. So the second sponsor is the SoCal Warriors. Unfortunately, the Warriors took a rough 38-8 loss on or at home to the Inland Empire Kings, which has put them at 2-2. Following week number 5. They will be back this week as they take on the Riverside Disciples, which in my opinion is one of the better names in their league and in semi-pro sports, but I digress. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get the second chance you've been waiting for as an athlete, because it's always fun to support your local semi-pro sport team, whether it's pro or semi-pro. You can follow them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, and you can follow them on Instagram at Southern California _Warriors. And you can also follow them on Facebook by typing in the word Southern California and then Warriors in the search bar. So thank you to the SoCal Warriors and BCI Businesses for being the official sponsor of IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. And while we're talking about the SoCal Warriors, that might as well be the first topic to discuss. The SoCal Warriors. So I actually checked out that game. I actually got to PA announce the SoCal Warriors semi-pro football game as I made the trip down to Fallbrook to check out Larry B and the SoCal Warriors, because Larry B does play on the SoCal Warriors, and Larry B is the big boss of IE Sports Radio. So for the SoCal Warriors, it was their military night, and to the best of my ability, I tried to basically deliver the best possible outcome for the whole honoring of the military and whatnot. And because both teams had players on their teams that had served in the military and that are currently serving in the military or that had served in the military. But I digress. And even their head coach, or one of the Inland Empire Kings' coaches, served in the military. So that was fun stuff. And SoCal Warriors also had players that served in the military. So for the game itself, it was actually quite the close battle in the first half. In the first half, the Warriors were only down 6-0 as the Kings were able to score a touchdown, which it was unfortunate for the Warriors. Like, the Warriors just couldn't get any offense going. Either they were turning the ball over, or they were turning it over on downs, or the other team was just playing stifling defense. So there was that. The Kings eventually took a 9-0 lead in the third quarter, but then, out of nowhere, the SoCal Warriors were able to get on the board as Shaggy Chase was able to unload I want to say it was near 50 yards for the touchdown, a 50-yard bomb to... I unfortunately could not make out the receiver just because their numbers were so bright under the lights. So that was my apologies, but Shaggy Chase just unloaded a 50-yard-ish touchdown, and it was amazing. And they even got the 2-point conversion to go. So it was 9-8. I think this was in the fourth quarter of play and whatnot. If not, it was still in the third quarter. Eventually, the Kings tied the game, they boosted their lead as they managed to get 6 more on the board, but unfortunately, their PAT was missed. So they were up 15-8, which was still manageable. Like, the Warriors were still in striking distance, and that was actually the end of the third quarter, which I personally thought that the Warriors were going to try to make it a very interesting match. I thought it was going to boil down to the last possession. Unfortunately for the Warriors, they just couldn't get any offense going, and the Kings were able to just tear them apart offensively and defensively. They scored 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter, and if you count the 6 previous points, they scored 27 unanswered points, and eventually the Kings won. Actually, no, 23 unanswered points, and then 29 unanswered points altogether. So, all in all, it was not a good match. It was not a fun little matchup, but I enjoyed it. It was fun for the most part. It was really good, and I think I'm trying to get the use of PA announcing. I'm still trying to get used to PA announcing. I really do appreciate the Warriors having me, though, and I appreciate some criticism and feedback. I guess I didn't get too many complaints, other than the fact that I was botching some of the numbers, because some of the numbers were tough to read, and then also the Kings had 2 players with the same numbers, and it's like, guys, really? It's like, things happen. Like, it's like, I can't tell which is the kicker and which is not, because they're both wearing the same number. And the kicker eventually told me afterward that his new jersey unfortunately was unavailable at the time, so he had to wear 99. So they had 2 players with the number 99, and they also had 2 players with the number 22. One was their running back, and one was I want to say it was like their safety or cornerback. Regardless, I'm still trying to get used to PA announcing football. I'm just so used to PA announcing lacrosse and whatnot. But it also does not help that I have to see two of the same number. It's like, it's this guy that had the number. It was tough, but I did my best, and that's all I could really say. And some of the Kings fans liked my PA announcing, and they said I was doing a good job, and I'm glad they were very kind to me in that aspect and whatnot. So I enjoyed the game, and I was happy to honor the military, and because, as most of us know, last Saturday was the 20-year anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, or the 9/11 attack in New York City by the Twin Towers in the Trade Center. So, where was I back in 2001 when 9/11 happened? So, 9/11, back then, I was basically in second grade, if not third grade. Yeah, I think it was second grade, but still. So I was in second grade, and I didn't even know what was happening. I went to school, and I didn't even know what was happening, and then I came home from school. My brother was actually sick, so my brother did what most sick people or sick kids do, and that would be to go stay in bed, watch TV, and then my mom, who was home at the time, told him to turn on the TV, and then he couldn't digest what was happening, but neither could I. He was 11 at the time, and I was 8 at the time, so he didn't understand what was happening, and he eventually found out that this was actually a terrorist attack, and that this could actually happen anywhere, at any place, at any time. So eventually I comprehended what happened, and I'm like, wow, this really happened. And it really was horrible. So I just couldn't believe that actually happened. And I posted this on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show Twitter account that, again, I was 8 years old. I didn't know what was happening at the time, and then I just got home from school, and then I'm watching the news all day with my mom and my grandma and my grandpa, and I'm just wondering, what is happening here? And what happened was 9/11 happened. A plane, Flight 93, crashed into the Twin Towers and the World Trade Center, and unfortunately, what happened was just chaos and whatnot. Chaos, destruction, and a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear being left in the minds of Americans all over the world. And it was tough, but we all stand united as one, and I am proud to be American. And this whole 9/11 attack has taught us one thing, and it's taught us to be stronger together, no matter what the circumstances. So, all in all, 9/11 was a life-altering event for myself and for my brother and the entire world. But we're stronger together, and we're just hoping for the best going forward. So that's going to do it for that aspect. But back to the SoCal Warriors, I definitely do appreciate the SoCal Warriors for having me on, and yeah, although Fallbrook is pretty far, I enjoy going down to Fallbrook, and it's fun. It's fun stuff. So I hope maybe I can come back again and PA announce. I ain't get too many complaints other than what was happening with the numbers. So all in all, it's all good. But I definitely do appreciate the SoCal Warriors playing as hard as they could for 3 quarters. The fourth quarter kind of got away from them, but I know they'll bounce back. Though the Riverside Disciples, I hear, are one of the tougher teams. But they will be back in a couple weeks to take on the Las Vegas Saints, and who knows, maybe I'll be at that game. We'll see. So that's going to do it for the SoCal Warriors. And thank you once again to the SoCal Warriors for being the official sponsor of IE Sports Radio. We definitely appreciate you. And background check international businesses. So let's move on to baseball. Yes, I'm actually going to do things a lot differently this week. I'm actually going to save the football for last because that's the big thing that's been happening, and NFL is king. So as for baseball, the Dodgers have clinched a spot in the playoffs, which is absolutely amazing. I'm happy for the boys in blue. And there's only 1.5 games back of the San Francisco Giants, as the Giants lost to the Padres last night, and the Dodgers were able to win. So good stuff right there. As the Dodgers also swept their most recent series against the Arizona Diamondbacks, which is no surprise. But the Giants lost to the Padres last night and on Tuesday, which means the Dodgers are only a half game back of the Giants for first place in the NL West. That's the good news. The bad news is that the Giants have the head-to-head tiebreaker as they won the series overall against the Dodgers 10-9, which makes me sad face, but that's all right. The Dodgers will hit the road tonight for a 3-game series against the Cincinnati Reds. The first game will start at 4:10, the second game will start at 11:10, and the third game will conclude at 10:10. And those latter 2 games are in the AM. Well, tonight's game is in the PM. So for the Reds, they're doing all that they can to try to make the playoffs as well, as currently in the wild card, they are actually in back of the San Diego Padres, as they're actually 1 game back of the final wild card spot, and they're a half game back of the Padres. But the Padres didn't do them any favors last night as they beat the Giants, which is good for the Dodgers, though, because their enemy, once their enemy, is now their friend. So good for the Padres. But back to the Dodgers. After their series against the Reds, they'll stay on the road to take on the Colorado Rockies on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then next Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they will hit the road to Arizona to take on the Diamondbacks. This past week, outside of sweeping the Diamondbacks, last weekend, the Dodgers swept the San Diego Padres, which was quite surprising. I didn't think they would actually pull off the sweep, as the Padres won Game 1 by a score of 3-0. They won last Saturday's game by a score of 5-4, and they won last Sunday's game by a score of 8-0. As we say hello to Gina G in the chat room, she says, "Have a great show, Teran. As always, you rock." And then Larry B says, "SoCal, appreciate you tuning in, Larry." Larry B, I actually did talk about the SoCal Warriors, not just the sponsor, but my weekend with the SoCal Warriors. So, let's just say I appreciate y'all having me, and I appreciate you being there after the game and checking in on me, saying that I got home safely. I really do appreciate that, Larry. You are the man, and honestly, you played great. You played great, man. And I hate that, unfortunately, you were getting held all game, but it's all good in the hood. I know y'all are going to bounce back. It might not be this week, it might not be next week, but it'll be soon. Like, your time will come. I know you will. So just keep working hard, keep grinding, and don't let anything get in your way, because the haters are gonna hate. Okay, but really, thank you again to Larry B for having me PA announce. I really do appreciate y'all. So Larry B says thanks, brother, and my pleasure. So back to the Dodgers. So the Dodgers swept the Padres, which was very, very tough. Or for the Padres, I mean, the Dodgers were able to pull off the win, but it's no big deal for the Dodgers because the Dodgers are playoff bound while the Padres are still trying to get that final wild card spot. It also didn't help that the Padres had to play the Dodgers, then the Giants. They had lost 5 in a row before beating the Giants in the latter 2 of the 4-game series, as the Giants have now won 2 in a row, as they actually have a huge series this weekend on the road against the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, once again, the Cardinals are ahead of the Padres in the wild card race for that final wild card spot, as the Cardinals are only a half game ahead of the Padres. However, a pair of wins for the Padres could help remedy that. But for the Padres, they have quite the tough schedule going forward, because after they play the Cardinals, they'll head back to Petco Park for a 3-game series against the Giants. And then after that, they'll stay at Petco Park to take on the NL East leader Atlanta Braves. And then after the Braves, they have the Dodgers, and then they close out the series on the road against the Giants. So that is a brutal end to the season for the Padres, and that's going to be really tough to keep up with. Like, the Padres, I don't know if this is official, but I think that's the toughest stretch when it comes to finishing out the season. So for the Padres, they're really going to need to play their cards right. And for the Braves, they haven't really locked up anything. They haven't locked up the NL East, as they're still 3 games ahead of the Phillies. But the Phillies also have postseason ambitions as well, so the Braves also got to be aware of that. And then the Cardinals, like I said, they're fighting for their wild card lives, and the Dodgers are trying to get that number 1 seed in the NL standings and also in the MLB. And then also you have the Giants, which are basically in the same boat as the Dodgers. So it looks like other than Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the 28th, 29th, and 30th, Dodgers fans are going to be rooting for the Padres for the most part. Except, of course, getting that wild card spot. Whenever the Padres play the Giants, then that's when the Dodgers fans will be rooting for them. So, playoff hope is not out of the question for the Padres, but if they want to win, they're going to have to prove themselves against a tough gauntlet. I mean, they took 2 out of 4 against the Giants, but getting swept by the Dodgers isn't really encouraging, especially when those wins came at the Chavez Ravine. And guess where the Padres have to go on September 20th or 28th, 29th, and 30th? The Chavez Ravine, a.k.a. Dodger Stadium. So, all in all for the Padres, if they actually make the postseason, I'll be rather impressed. But most people were writing them off as a World Series contender, but it's looking like it's not going to be happening. But I still have faith in the Padres. We'll see, though. At least the Padres aren't like the poor little Angels, as that's actually a perfect segue to get into. So the Angels are 72 and 74. They did actually take 2 out of 3 against the Chicago White Sox, which guess what was their first series win of the season? The Chicago White Sox. As the Angels dropped the first game against the White Sox 9-3, but won the second game 3-2, and then they won the third game 9-3, which was absolutely amazing. So the Angels and their little playoff hopes, or their little glimmer of playoff hope, is still 10 games behind the final wild card spot, or both wild card spots, because the Blue Jays and the Red Sox are both tied for the wild card spots in the American League. But, like I said, the Angels' playoff hopes are basically starting to wilt, and it's no bueno. And like I said, the Angels also have a tough end of the season schedule, with one series being winnable, but not guaranteed. So this weekend, the Angels will head back home to Angel Stadium to take on the Oakland A's this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, this upcoming week, the Angels will stay at home to take on the Houston Astros. I can't stop doing that. I'm sorry. I gotta do it. It's in my DNA. But the Angels will take on the Houston Astros this upcoming Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the Dodgers, or not the Dodgers, the Angels will stay at home to take on the Seattle Mariners, which they're also fighting for a playoff spot. they're doing all that they can, but they're 4 games back, which is no bueno. The Angels' winnable series, however, will come on the 28th, 29th, and 30th when the Angels hit the road to Texas to take on the Rangers. And then the Angels close out the series still on the road to take on the Seattle Mariners, which, depending on where the Mariners are, well, regardless, I think the Mariners are going to be a tough out, considering the Mariners, I think, overachieved this year. But this isn't the Seattle Sports Show. This is the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. If you want more Seattle sports, definitely check out the Northwest Territory Sports Show with Brad Buckingham every Sunday at noon Pacific time. Brad does a fantastic job talking about Seattle sports. Not just Seattle sports, but all sports in the Northwest. So I definitely recommend giving that a listen. He does a fantabulous job, even though he's a Seahawks fan, and us Rams fans kind of don't like that. Even though I'm not really a Rams fan. My brother is, but I don't necessarily hate the Rams, but I digress. So the season is almost over for the Angels. I would like for the Angels to finish 500. If that is the case, then that would be quite grand. But it's not looking too good. I had the Angels finishing second in the AL West, but unfortunately, with how everything is going, they'll probably get fourth. If for some odd reason they do finish third, or they finish 500, or they miraculously somehow make the postseason, I think the Angels deserve like some sort of trophy of their own. Kind of like how Mike Bond gave USC's men's basketball team rings, even though they made the Elite Eight. But I digress on that. So anyway, the pain is almost over, Angels fans. And they could focus on pitching in the offseason, hopefully. But that is going to do it for the baseball aspect of the show. Let's jump on over to some MLS action as LAFC, man. I can't believe they are back on track. It feels like forever ago that I was poking fun of them, saying that they haven't won in over a week. But they have now won 3 in a row ever since 2 weeks ago when they upset Sporting KC. As LAFC beat Real Salt Lake last Sunday 3-2. They got 2 goals from Christian Arango and 1 goal from Tony Datkovic. Datkovic's goal was the go-ahead goal, which broke the tie at the 59th minute. That was actually an own goal from Real Salt Lake, so theoretically Real Salt Lake had that goal, but I still think own goals shouldn't be a thing unless they actually kicked it into the net. Like if the striker kicks it off the defender and it goes in, that shouldn't be an own goal. That should be a goal courtesy of the one that banked it off the player and put it into the goal. So that's just my opinion. But Christian Arango was able to provide both goals for LAFC, so good stuff for him. And then this past Wednesday, LAFC defeated Austin FC 2-1 as they got 1 goal from Christian Arango, which was a penalty kick, and then they got a goal from Daniel Musovski. And believe it or not, that proved to be the tiebreaker because that occurred in the 81st minute, and eventually LAFC was able to get the win. So, believe it or not, LAFC is actually back in the playoff hunt. They're in 7th place, and this just goes to show you that the MLS is crazy, man. Just like how the Galaxy surpassed their win total from last year, or their point total from last year. So if the playoffs started today, LAFC would be hitting the road to take on Seattle, which would be a tough out for LAFC because the Sounders, I'm mixing up MLB and MLS. The Sounders are one of the more complete teams in the MLS, as much as it pains me to say. But for LAFC, they are back on track as they'll hit the road to take on Portland this upcoming Sunday. And then next Saturday, they are hitting the road back to NorCal to take on the San Jose Quakes, which honestly, San Jose is in the playoff hunt, and Portland is... San Jose is actually dropped to 11th, but Portland, on the other hand, is above LAFC. However, a win for LAFC could bring LAFC up a little higher in the standings. Now, what about the Galaxy? So, the Galaxy, ever since they tied in El Tráfico with LAFC, they split they tied both of their matches. They tied with the Colorado Rapids 1-1, and then they tied with Houston 1-1. The Galaxy actually trailed 1-0 until the 80th minute when Samuel Grandsir was able to provide the equalizer and provide the point for the Galaxy. And then against the Houston Dynamo, LA trailed 1-0 until the 61st minute when Javier Hernandez was able to knock in the equalizer and give LA another point. So this weekend, LA is hitting the road to Chile, Minnesota to take on Minnesota, and that's also a very, very big game just because Minnesota is in the playoff hunt. Currently, right now, Minnesota is 8th, so if Minnesota wants to make the playoffs, they're going to have to take down some of these bigger, tougher opponents. For the Galaxy, they are currently 4th in the Western Conference, but those ties haven't been doing them any favors because Colorado just keeps doing good things. Except they actually tied their previous match against Portland, so as long as Colorado's getting points, it's not looking good for the Galaxy. Especially if they start winning, if Colorado continues to win, then it's even worse for the Galaxy because that's going to force them to be the 4th seed, and they don't want to. They don't want to be on the path of Sporting KC Sporting KC. And Larry B says 4th place at the moment for the Galaxy. Not too bad, but we've got to get it in gear. Yeah, I agree. I think the Galaxy have been rather lax. And remember when I was poking fun of LAFC for having not won a match in over a month? Well, it's kind of looking that way for the Galaxy as their last win came against Real Salt Lake back when they won on August 4th. And currently, today, it is September 17th. So, it's been a month since the Galaxy have last won a game, which kind of has me worried that they are trending in the wrong direction. I mean, Larry said it best, 4th is not bad, but it's still on the path of the number 1 seed. And it's basically pick your poison for the Galaxy. It's like they're either going to take on Sporting KC, which they lost 2-0 to, or they're going to take on Seattle, which they lost both times to. However, against the Sounders, I think the Galaxy are rather improving against, considering the Galaxy, the first time they got drubbed against the Sounders, and then the second go-around, the Galaxy actually led. Unfortunately, the Sounders are just that good of a team, and they managed to take down the Galaxy, which made me sad face. But for the time being, they do got to get it in gear. Minnesota is a great test for them because if they can win that one on the road, that's a huge win, and it's a big icebreaker. Get it? Considering Minnesota is, it has snow, and it's filled with ice and frozen. I'll see myself out. But not next Sunday, but the following Sunday, the Galaxy will hit the road to Austin to take on Austin FC. That's actually going to be played on ESPN2 and ESPN Deportes, and that's a 6:30 p.m. Pacific time start time. So, again, I kind of wonder why that of all games is going to be on prime time, aka national television. Yeah, well, maybe I'm just overthinking things. But back to the Galaxy, they won't be back home until they take on LAFC in the 3rd installment of El Tráfico. So, for now, though, LAFC or the LA Galaxy have to get it done on the road. This is kind of another big test for them. 3-game road trip, and then once they return home for that 2-game homestand against LAFC and Portland, that's going to be another big test. So the Galaxy need to get some of these games out of the way. They need to start proving why they're the 4th seed and why they could pose a threat in the Western Conference. My only qualm with them is that they couldn't beat Colorado. If they beat Colorado, then I'd be convinced that this team would be a threat in the Western Conference. But after seeing that, it's kind of looking like it's not going to be happening, especially since they haven't beaten some of the upper echelon teams in the Western Conference, like Sporting KC and Seattle. So there's still time for the Galaxy to improve, but they're going to need to start playing better. And something else to note for the Galaxy is that their third and second to last matches are against Sporting KC and Seattle, which are both road games. So, woo, Nelly, that's going to be quite the challenge for the Galaxy. But that could actually warm them up for playoff time, because I definitely see the Galaxy making the postseason. They just have to start playing their cards right. So, all in all, the Galaxy are still in good shape, but they need to start pulling out wins. No more of this tying stuff, because at least if for some odd reason, if they tie to Minnesota, they will have not lost a match in over a month. But it's still been 1 month, well, over 1 month since the Galaxy have last won a match. So for the Galaxy, it's all about them winning those tough test matchups. And then they also got to win the winnable matchups. No more losing to sub-500 teams or subpar teams. And losing to Austin would be a heartbreaker, considering Austin isn't really... They're an expansion team. And nothing against Austin, but they're not what we'd call MLS Cup contenders. Nothing against Austin. I'm not trying to be a hater on them, but I'm just saying the Galaxy are probably going to have a much better chance of winning the MLS Cup than they do. So, with that being said, that's going to do it for the MLS portion of the show. We're actually going to take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk some NFL with the Chargers and the Rams. We're going to talk about USC firing Clay Helton. Also talk a little about UCLA and their matchup against Fresno State. And we'll also talk some San Diego State against Arizona, or against Utah. So you're listening to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this. And by the way, I will be putting up the Twitter space, so keep on the lookout for that. So let's head to a break.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
everybody? This is Teran Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
College football, and do you want to hear a college football show dedicated to all that is college football, including junior college and the CCCAA and the NJCAA, the NAIA, and the NCAA, including Division III, Division II, Division I AA in the FCS, and Division I A in the FBS? Well then look no further. Join myself, Larry B., and my colleagues, Mr. H-Town Blake Henley, and Mr. Christian Espinoza, each week during the college football season for the latest in college football on 3 and Out College Edition, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
That's right, everybody. You can check out all of IE Sports Radio's amazing shows on several different platforms such as iHeartRadio, Spotify, Podcast Addict, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, you name it. So, welcome back to the second half of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I'm actually doing things a little differently, and I hope I don't mess anything up here, because I'm actually trying out the new Twitter Spaces, which I guess that is the newest craze, so I hope I'm not messing anything up, and I hope people are listening. Looks like my mic is on when it comes to Twitter Spaces, so yeah, it's all good in the neighborhood. So anyway, so now let's jump on into the second half of our show. It looks like everything is running smoothly when it comes to the Twitter Spaces. I apologize if this isn't like the best time to do Twitter Spaces, but I'm starting to get the hang of it. So anyway, let's move on to the second half of the show. So let's jump to some NFL action. Let's talk some Chargers and Rams action, as the Chargers pulled off the big victory over the Washington football team. They won by a score of 20-16. Justin Herbert was pretty good, actually. He wasn't terrible. He was certainly not the best, though. So anyway, so for Justin Herbert, he actually had 336 passing yards. He did have one touchdown. He unfortunately had an interception, and then he supposedly had one fumble. I'll get to that in a little bit. So one good sight to see was Austin Eckler, as he was able to record a touchdown. He managed to run the ball a whole lot. I don't know what Brandon Staley's end game was when it came to the offense, but it didn't involve Justin Herbert throwing screen passes to Eckler or some of the running backs. So for Austin Eckler, he was able to get a red zone touchdown as the Chargers took the first lead at 7-0. And then Washington was able to respond with field goals. They were just pelting the Chargers with field goals, which I guess wasn't too bad. But the Chargers also responded with field goals of their own. I kid you not, the Chargers actually have a kicker. I'm not kidding. Their kicker's name is Tristan Vizcaino, which I can't believe he actually is doing well. Like, I hope I'm not jinxing anything, but he actually did perform well. Whereas the former kicker, Michael Badgley, got picked up by the Tennessee Titans, and he missed a field goal attempt, and he missed an extra point for the Titans, which the Titans eventually wound up getting crushed by the Arizona Cardinals, but I digress. So, for Tristan Vizcaino, he didn't miss an extra point, nor did he miss a field goal. Spoiler alert. Which is very promising for the Chargers. I think the Chargers made the correct decision by going with Vizcaino instead of sticking with Badgley, because, simply put, Michael Badgley is not the money badger anymore. So, regardless, the Chargers led 13-9 at halftime, and then something happened in the first half. I also need to make note that Ryan Fitzpatrick, the starting QB for the Washington football team, actually went down with a hip injury. Long story short, Uchenna Nwosu tried to bring what's-his-face down, Fitzpatrick down, and I guess he didn't intentionally do it. Like, I hope Uchenna Nwosu doesn't get hate for this, but Uchenna, unfortunately, hurt. He didn't mean to hurt it, but apparently the hip of Ryan Fitzpatrick did not agree with that tackle from Nwosu, and he is now put on IR. He's not out for the season, but he's going to be out for a long while, as Taylor Heineke came in, and Taylor Heineke was the backup for Fitzpatrick. He had appeared in one game last year, as he was the starting quarterback for the Washington football team in their playoff game against the eventual Super Bowl champion, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So for the football team, they actually didn't do bad under what's-his-face, Taylor Heineke, as he actually was slinging the ball well. His favorite target was Terry McLaurin, and in the second half, that's pretty much who he went with. He went with Scary Terry, and he eventually found Logan Thomas for the touchdown. The football team eventually took the lead at 16-13, but the Chargers were able to drive down the field. Larry Roundtree and Eckler were getting some good yardage, and also Jared Cook had a very good game. I was very surprised and pleased that Jared Cook had a great game with the Chargers in his debut. So that's looking very promising for the Chargers starting out, as he was signed to a one-year deal. I don't know how much Jared Cook has in the tank, or how much left Jared Cook has in the tank, but I like this Jared Cook. He provides good veteran leadership at the tight end, and he also is familiar with the Raiders system, even though I think the coach at the time when Cook was a Raider was Jack Del Rio, so I think that's kind of irrelevant. Though Jack Del Rio was the defensive coordinator for the football team. So on the next drive, the Chargers actually got down into the red zone, and then I think it was like second down, where Justin Herbert was trying to throw the ball away, but he got hit right after he chucked the ball away into the end zone for an incomplete pass. But then the refs actually ruled that a fumble, and I'm like, there's no way. It was almost too bad to be true. And eventually, the referees decided to rule it a fumble, as I couldn't believe it. It didn't even look like a fumble. It's like he was trying to throw it away. I couldn't understand it. Like, how is that a fumble? Like, if you see the replay, Herbert was throwing it into the ground. Like it was just too bad to be true. I'm like, they're going to reverse this. But unfortunately, the referees didn't reverse it, and the Chargers turned it over. So eventually, the football team settled for a 51-yard field goal, but they missed because the Chargers know what it's like to have kickers miss long field goals. So I feel for Dustin Hopkins, which that could have been huge for the Chargers, that could have been huge for the Chargers in terms of them, considering they would have had to get 7, but it wasn't too detrimental. So the Chargers were eventually driving down the field. I think it was the end of the third quarter where the Chargers were in Washington territory, and then Justin Herbert was trying to get Keenan Allen, but William Jackson III came up with a huge interception. As Sparrow Dita said, it was a dangerous pass, which led to an interception. And it's like, oh no. And it wasn't Herbert's fault. I'm not going to put the blame fully on Herbert. Like, I know he was going to Allen, but that's so obvious because that is his favorite target. And that's just a great pick by William Jackson. So the fact that he was able to keep his feet in bounds and get the pick is absolutely good for William Jackson. And then eventually Washington had it at their own 4 or 5 yard line. So at that point I was hoping the Chargers could stuff them in their own territory and then force them to punt, which would give the Chargers good field position. But the unthinkable happened. The Chargers caught a break. Asante Samuel Jr. forced a fumble, and the Chargers eventually recovered. It was the miracle beyond miracles, as the Chargers basically had a free red zone look. And I think it was Antonio Gibson that fumbled the ball for the football team, and this kind of reminded me of the Chargers game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where Joshua Kelly fumbled the ball in Tampa Bay territory. And I understand what Washington was trying to do. They were trying to get out of their own territory and find themselves some more breathing room for Taylor Heineke. But unfortunately for them, they fumbled the ball. It was just a good play by Asante Samuel, the rookie. Absolutely amazing, which eventually set up the go-ahead touchdown for the Chargers as Justin Herbert found Mike Williams for the touchdown. And there was concern that Justin Herbert's one touchdown... Well, keep in mind, Justin Herbert had scored a passing touchdown in all but one of his games. And that one game that he didn't score a passing touchdown was against the New England Patriots, which we don't talk about that game, but I digress. So, eventually, the Chargers were able to force a 3-and-out not a 3-and-out. They forced the football team to punt, and eventually Justin Herbert was able to lead the team down the field. They eventually got into Washington territory. It wasn't over, but eventually the Chargers got the first down that they desperately needed, and they eventually just milked the clock, and they forced Washington to burn their timeouts, which that was a great little end of the game drive. And I really got to give credit to Justin Herbert. He's still learning, but the fact that he was able to take on a defense that intense, which has Chase Young, William Jackson III, Vontez Sweat, the list goes on and on. That's amazing. I'm very impressed that Justin Herbert was able to hold his own against the defense. Something else to note, and this is something else I got to throw in there, is that the Chargers actually got great contribution from their offensive line, courtesy of Rashawn Slater, as he allowed 0 pressures, which was absolutely amazing. So yeah, it was rather impressive that Rashawn Slater, the rookie offensive tackle, allowed no pressures to Justin Herbert. And I think the Chargers made the correct decision by drafting Slater in the first round. And it really paid dividends. My only qualm is that Brian Bulaga got hurt, and I was very worried. I'm like, oh no. Let the injuries begin. And it's disappointing, but Bulaga has been injury prone. You look at his first year, he was injury prone, and he missed a good chunk of games. And also, Brian Bulaga had been battling a minor injury, but he was good to go. Unfortunately, he is now put on IR, so he's going to miss at least 3 straight games. As the Chargers did sign Michael Schofield. Bleh. So the Chargers signed Michael Schofield, and now he's going to be helping the Chargers hopefully protect Justin Herbert. Something else I kind of wonder is that why did what's-his-face, Rashawn Slater, not get nominated for Rookie of the Week? If he allowed no pressures to Justin Herbert in his debut, mind you, keep in mind this was Rashawn Slater's first game of the season, and he allowed no pressures, the fact that he allowed no pressures in his first game of the season as a rookie speaks to high volumes of how the Chargers made the correct decision by drafting Slater. So I hope Slater continues to pan out as the great offensive tackle that he is. So the Chargers are 1-0 going into this week's game as they return to SoFi Stadium to take on the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last Thursday by a score of 31-29, as I don't think this is going to be an easy matchup for the Chargers. Like, the Chargers are facing a tough Cowboys team. Dak Prescott is good. Ezekiel Elliott could have a big breakout game because the Chargers were really struggling against the run this past weekend. Now, obviously, it's the first game of the season, and there's nothing to be alarmed at, but if they're allowing big games to Antonio Gibson and Trey McKissick, then I'm kind of a little worried myself for the rest of the rest of the way for the Chargers in terms of the run game, as the Cowboys have some good runners on their team. They have, like I said, they have Ezekiel Elliott, who hasn't really been the greatest running back, but he's not the worst. And they also have Tony Pollard, who can also be good. He could also be used as a good RB2. So, and then Dak looked rather impressive. Like, his shoulder wasn't bothering too much. It looked like that ankle was no longer a thing. Like, Dak could possibly bounce back. And this is kind of one of those pick'em games where the Chargers are favorited to win this game. Last I checked, they were 2.5-point favorites. But for the Cowboys, they kind of need this win in order to keep pace in the NFC East. As they're doing all they can to try to possibly keep up with the Eagles, as the Eagles were the only team to win last week, defeating the Atlanta Falcons 32-6. Washington, the Giants, and the Cowboys all lost last week, and those three teams are looking to bounce back. Well, Washington bounced back. I forgot Washington and the Giants played last night. But for the Cowboys, this could be their chance to move into a tie for first place or move up in the NL East standings, as the Cowboys play the Chargers and the Eagles are taking on the San Francisco 49ers, which that should be a very tough matchup for the Eagles. But for the Chargers, I'm confident they can get the win, but they're going to need to stop the run game. They're also going to need to put pressure on Dak. Like, if they could put pressure on Dak like they did with Ryan Fitzpatrick when he was in the first quarter, I think the Chargers may have a good shot at winning. It's going to be tough, though, because the Cowboys they're kind of that mid-level team. Like, the defense isn't as better as it was when Washington played the Chargers, but I think it's still going to be a tough game regardless. The Cowboys have been hit in terms of injuries, as their offensive tackle has been hit, and their defensive line has been savagely hit. I said savagely, quite weird. Why did I say savagely? Severely hurt. But regardless, the Cowboys have been suffering a lot of tough injuries, and I feel for the Cowboys. The Chargers went through this last year with Derwin James, who looked really impressive. I think he was the highest-rated safety, or one of the highest-rated safeties from this past week. So, good for Derwin James. I'm very happy, and yeah, good. It's good for the Chargers to have that confidence. But as for the Cowboys, this is going to be a very tough matchup. I think the Chargers have what it takes to take on. I think the Chargers can beat the Cowboys, but the defense is really going to have to shine. The defense, to me, had so many stupid penalties. Like, for example, Joey Bosa had a roughing the passer penalty, which gave the Washington football team a late field goal to cut the Chargers' lead from 13-6 all the way down to 13-9. So there was that right there. And then also Joey Bosa had another roughing the passer penalty, which he didn't mean to have a roughing the passer penalty, but unfortunately Joey Bosa went for the legs of what's-his-face, Taylor Heineke, and eventually it was ruled roughing the passer. And Bosa said he tried to be as gentle as possible on that last one, but there were so many penalties the Chargers had defensively, which if the Chargers take away those defensive penalties, I think Washington doesn't even score 16. I think they have like 13 or maybe even 10. But I digress. Regardless, for the Chargers, I have them winning, let's go with 31-20. I think the Cowboys are going to put up a big-time fight, but I think that the Chargers are going to rise to the occasion. The Chargers need to be 2-0 by the time the following Sunday happens, because the Chargers have the most brutal 6-game start to the season. They had the Washington football team. This week they have the Cowboys. Next week they have the Chiefs, which that's going to be even more brutal. The following week they have the Raiders, which beat the Ravens last week. And then they also have the Cleveland Browns, and then they have the Baltimore Ravens. Both of those games are not going to be easy outs. So the Chargers, to me, they need to pick up some big-time victories. And if you want to throw in a 7-game stretch, after the Chargers' bye week, they play the New England Patriots, which they have struggled immensely in the past. Now, obviously, Cam Newton was the quarterback, and the Chargers have struggled against Cam Newton teams, such as the Panthers and the Patriots. But when it comes to the Patriots in general, they always seem to find the Chargers' number. Last year was no exception, especially defensively on special teams. Yeesh! But for this week, I'm picking the Chargers to beat the Cowboys 31-20. I'm confident in the Chargers' defense. It may be close like it was this past week, but I think the Chargers can pull away when it matters most. And I think Justin Herbert should be able to have a somewhat clean game. So that's that for the Chargers. Now let's go on to the Rams, which had the honor of playing in a primetime game. They got to play on Sunday Night Football against the Chicago Bears. They got the honor of playing the first game at SoFi with fans. I also should make note that there will be a lot of Cowboys fans, but I'm hoping there will be a good amount of Chargers fans there, especially since Justin Herbert has been building revenue. So we'll have to see if there are more Cowboys fans. But I don't think Justin Herbert will mind. I think Herbert will just go there and just put on for his city and put on for his team. So now let's jump over to the Rams, where the Rams had themselves quite the Sunday as they just dominated the Chicago Bears, winning 34-14. As Matt Stafford looked very impressive in his debut. He had 3 touchdowns, all of which were to different receivers. So for Matt Stafford, I was very impressed with his gameplay. He looked totally comfortable. He only got sacked once, which wasn't too bad. As for the Rams defense, they made it really difficult on Andy Dalton. And honestly, I don't understand why the Bears decided to roll with Andy Dalton. I think they should have switched out. They should have. I understand they were rotating quarterbacks with Dalton and Justin Fields, but pick one or the other. It's do you really think Andy Dalton is going to have an easy time against the Rams, which has Aaron Donald and a bunch of other talented players? The dude threw a pick in the end zone. That should have been a red flag right there, but I digress. So for the Rams, they kick off the season 1-0, and something else to note was that Darrell Henderson got a majority of the running back snaps. We only got to see 1 snap of Sony Michel, but that's all right. It shows that Henderson is capable of running the ball. They didn't have too many rushing yards, but I think the Rams will be just fine in terms of that aspect. So for the Rams, their next game is on Sunday, and it's against the Indianapolis Colts. It's at Indianapolis, so the Rams will be hitting the road to the land of the Indy 500, aka Indianapolis. That's a 10 a.m. Pacific start time game. So, for me, this one may be a little bit tougher, but they're facing a Colts team that has a solid defense, actually. I don't think their defense isn't too bad, as they'll also be facing a familiar quarterback that they played last year in Carson Wentz. Ironically enough, they played Carson Wentz in Week 2, and then they also played... And this year they're playing Carson Wentz in Week 2, so that's pretty funny. So, for the Rams' keys to victory, they just got to keep Stafford protected, because that Colts defense is nothing to laugh at. I think last week when they took on the Seahawks, it did not do them any justice, because Russell Wilson is such a magician when he's in the pocket and he's super poised. It also doesn't help that Carson Wentz was making his debut as a Colt, so now that Wentz has that first game under his belt, I think the Colts will be a little bit more comfortable. Even though this was his first game coming off of a minor foot injury. So, for the Rams, they just got, like I said, they got to keep Matt Stafford protected. They also got to get, I would like to see their run game getting more involved, whether it's with Michelle or whether it's with Henderson. Honestly, I think the Rams will roll to victory. I have them winning 28 to 10. I think that's a fair score. I don't think it's ultimately fair for the Colts, but I think the Colts... I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts were able to make it a game, but I just think that the Rams are on a whole nother level. So, especially with Stafford being super comfortable under Sean McVay's system. So I think the Rams have finally found their quarterback. It's nothing against Jared Goff. I think he was a solid quarterback, and he looked pretty decent. He almost led the Lions to a comeback victory against the Niners. Sorry if you're hearing this, Gina, but I think for the Rams, they have to mind their P's and Q's. They have to cross their T's and dot their I's, and they just got to limit their mistakes. They didn't make any mistakes last week, but in the second half, they were punting, and they were giving the other team good field position. So we'll have to see what happens. But I have the Chargers and the Rams both winning this week. I think both of those teams have the potential to win. The Rams, I for sure can see winning on the road. The Chargers may struggle a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if they had another close game. But I think the Chargers will do just enough to get the win. And then also the Chargers are playing on CBS, and they'll have the honor of Jim Nantz and Tony Romo calling their game. And fun fact for all you useless stat people, Justin Herbert is now 2-0 when Sparrow Ditas is play-by-playing the game. But for Justin Herbert, he's 0-1 when Jim Nantz is on the call. But that's a useless stat right there. So that's going to do it for the Rams and the Chargers. I hope the Chargers can get the win with Jim Nantz on the call. And I'm thinking, of course, Tony Romo and Jim Nantz would be at the Cowboys game. It's like, why am I not surprised? But that's going to do it for the NFL. Now let's jump into college football, and then I'll let you all go for the weekend because it's Friday, baby. It's finally Friday. Free again. I'm about to gear up for a wild weekend. Okay, so as for our college football teams, some of them took one on the chin, and then some had byes, and then some were able to get the win. The biggest culprit was San Diego State getting the victory over Arizona. Now, last week I thought they were I'm going to eat a lot of crow for this just because I thought Arizona was going to actually squeak one out, especially against San Diego State, having offensive woes against New Mexico State from last week. But they were able to jump out to a 21-7 advantage at the end of the first quarter. They actually led 21-0 with 7:07 remaining in the first quarter, and I was very impressed. I was like, where was this San Diego State team last week? As Jordan Brookshire was able to put together a solid game. He had 2 tutties, aka touchdowns, and his favorite target was Daniel Bellinger, who had over 113 yards. He had 1 touchdown. He only had 3 receptions, which is kind of impressive. Greg Bell had himself a big game as the senior had 125 yards, 1 touchdown, and he had 17 carries, which was some good stuff. Arizona was led by freshman Will Plummer, who is in no relation to Catherine Plummer. I digress. He is an Arizona native quarterback, so he was he was kind of held in check. He only had 109 yards, which wasn't bad when it comes to the Aztec defense. But this one was over by halftime. The Aztecs led 35-7 at the end of the first half. And I'm like, gosh, dang, where was this team last week? And the best part is San Diego State covered. So good for you, San Diego State. You covered, and you were able to get the dub. So we are proud of you. So San Diego State is 2-0. Good job, San Diego State, as they have a very challenging matchup against Utah, which actually wound up losing the Holy War to BYU, which has forced Utah out of the rankings. So San Diego State did get a good amount of luck against Arizona, but I don't think they're going to beat Utah. Like, let's be honest. Utah is a good team, and I think that loss to BYU doesn't give them any justice, just because it's a rivalry game, and I knew BYU was going to be somewhat good. I actually almost picked them on 3-and-Out College Edition, but unfortunately for BYU, they were able to pull off the upset, winning the Holy War. Utah is an 8.5-point favorite, so for San Diego State, in order to win, their offense is going to have to come clicking, and their defense is going to have to come out swinging. So I'm kind of confident San Diego State can pull out the win, but I have to go with Utah. It's nothing against the Aztecs. I love San Diego State, but they are kind of out of their league against this Pac-12 school. Like, Arizona was just the appetizer when it comes to facing the Pac-12 schools. Now they get one of the main courses. So good luck, San Diego State. It is a home game, so Utah does have to travel down, and San Diego State doesn't have that disadvantage of going up to the Rocky Mountains to play in a higher altitude, but it is all good because San Diego State is San Diego State. But I still have Utah winning. Maybe San Diego State could cover, but I highly doubt it. I think Utah gets the win by 10, which that'll make all DraftKings and bettors frustrated. So that's that for San Diego State, which I hope they can win. If so, then they'll be making me eat a lot of crow. And let's jump over to UCLA, as they had a bye last week. They were coming off of that 38-27 win over the team that thinks they have sissy blue shirts. As UCLA is actually ranked 13th in the coaches poll. So good job to UCLA. Like, for a team that hasn't had too much success under what's-his-face, Chip Kelly, they're actually doing rather phenomenal. So this weekend they will take on Fresno State, which is the first of 2 Northern California opponents that they'll be playing. So the second being Stanford, but more on that later. So UCLA is an 11-point favorite as they're playing Fresno State, who is 2-1 on the season. They're coming off a big victory over Cal Poly, which might as well throw it out there. Cal Poly got stomped on 63-10, but Fresno State is good. They took Oregon to the limit. So UCLA is an 11-point favorite, but this could be a potential trap game for UCLA, because Fresno State has nothing to lose, and they actually performed well against Oregon. If UCLA doesn't mind its P's and Q's, it could be on the other side of this win, or of this game. So I think UCLA gets the win. It'll be tough, but I think they'll win by 14. I think UCLA has the keys, and I think they're adapting well under Kelly's system, but Fresno State isn't going to make it easy on them. I think it's going to take a second half surge for UCLA to pull away from Fresno State. But I'm confident in UCLA. And then we also got San Diego, who was 0-2, taking on Montana State. San Diego took one on the chin against UC Davis, losing 53-7, but I had a feeling they would lose to UC Davis, just because UC Davis beat Tulsa. So, and that's an FCS school, mind you, defeating an FBS school. So, I don't know how UC Davis was able to pull out the victory, but good job, Davis. So, they play Montana State. There is no betting line for this. San Diego is still looking for its first victory as they're hitting the road to take on Montana State. So we wish San Diego the best, and hopefully they can get the dub. Now we got to go to the last but certainly not least in terms of the college Southern California football teams, USC. Hold on a minute. I got to prepare myself. All right, y'all. USC lost to Stanford last week. I'm not kidding you. I was getting glimpses of the score, and I'm like, okay, USC's down by a little. It's no big deal. No big deal at all. And they were down 7-0 at the end of the first quarter, and I'm like, okay, USC is just having a little bit of a slow start. And then it was tied 7-7, and that was as close as USC got, as they never got any closer because Stanford actually played organized football. Unlike USC, whose kicker got booted out the game on the first play. And Gina, I see you in the chat room, Gina, saying, what an upset, haha. Yeah, you're laughing now, but we'll see who's laughing at the end of Pac-12 play. That loss could be the biggest blessing in disguise for USC. So, regardless, USC never got close, as eventually USC lost 42-28. That final score does not do it any justice, as Stanford pretty much threw in its reserves and rested its starters. So, yeah. So, theoretically, USC lost 42-13, but we're not going to go that deep. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. As USC had... They didn't have the best game from Keaton Slovis, who had 223 yards, passing yards, 1 touchdown, and a pick six. That was pretty embarrassing. And at least Vavai Ma'alapei had himself a good game in terms of rushing the ball, but he didn't have any touchdowns. And Gina, yeah, I see you in the chat room, Gina. She says, I told you Stanford would come back from that loss the week before. Yeah. I just think USC played down to its competition. I think USC really overlooked Stanford. As disappointing as it is, USC looked like crap. And there's no way around it. And I think it's disappointing that they were able to lose to Stanford at home, mind you. And they were honoring their beach volleyball team who was getting their championship rings. So, I think we gotta call Will Ferrell on this. But 2 days after, USC fired their head coach Clay Helton. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, is this true? And eventually it was true. USC fired Clay Helton. And my goodness, it was the first good thing that USC actually did. As Gina says that I am right, that I think USC overlooked them and Stanford stepped up. Yes, I agree that Stanford stepped up. But Clay Helton is no longer the head coach at USC. Dante Williams is now the the interim coach, as hopefully USC does land somebody good. Larry B said it in the chat room. He said, I just hope we land a solid coach. I hope USC lands a solid coach too. No more of this new hire stuff. Like, get somebody that is experienced and get somebody that has a winning culture. So, please don't butcher this, USC. Please don't butcher this. Anyway, so USC is 1-1, but they're 0-1 in Pac-12 play. I'd rather them lose to San Jose State, but unfortunately, it didn't happen. As USC will now be hitting the road to Pullman to take on Washington State. That is a 12:30 p.m. Pacific time start. So Washington State is also 1-1 as Washington State defeated Portland State, which we don't care about. And then Washington State lost to Utah State last week. So if USC wants to have any hope of winning the Pac-12, they have to. I repeat, they have to win out the remainder of their Pac-12 games. I don't even care if they lose to Notre Dame. They have to win out the remainder, or BYU. They have to win their Pac-12 games. They have to beat Washington State. They have to beat Oregon State. They have to beat Colorado. They have to beat Utah. They have to beat Arizona. They have to beat Arizona State. They have to beat Cal. And they definitely have to beat USC if they want to win the Pac-12 championship. Well, not just win the Pac-12 championship. They have to win it in order to win the Pac-12 South. Then they got to go and win the Pac-12 championship, which could be next to impossible because Oregon is looking better because they pulled off that upset over Ohio State. So for USC, I'm confident they'll get the win over Washington State. USC is 7.5-point favorites, but they got to move on from Clay Helton getting fired. They have to focus on Washington State. According to Dante Williams, he did say that USC has moved on from Clay Helton being fired. I just hope that speaks to high volumes on the field, because if not, then USC can kiss their title hopes goodbye. So USC will look to try to bounce back against Washington State, and then they'll be home next Saturday against Oregon State, which is also 1-1. So we'll see if USC can possibly work its way back up, as Oregon State did defeat Hawaii, but last week they lost to Purdue. Well, the first week they lost to Purdue. So we'll see if USC can get back on track. All right, so that is going to do it for the college football aspect of this show. And before we head out, we need to drop the Dum Dum of the Week award. And the Dum Dum of the Week award can go to anyone. It could go to me, it could go to my neighbor, it could go to anybody who does dumb things in this world. And the Dum Dum of the Week award and no one is safe from the Dum Dum of the Week award. And this was actually a little tough to pick the Dum Dum of the Week award, just because there hasn't been really too much dumb stuff. My apologies. But there hasn't been too much dumb stuff in this world. But I kind of have to give the Dum Dum of the Week award to two coaches. So the first Dum Dum of the Week award goes to, and I hate to give this guy Dum Dum of the Week award, but Dum Dum of the Week award goes to, the first Dum Dum of the Week award goes to Ron Rivera. Now, obviously, Washington played the Chargers as best as they could. They tried. They really tried. But with, I think it was like 6 or 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and Washington was driving down the field, and they were actually in Chargers territory, I kind of wonder, what the heck are you doing giving the ball back to Justin Herbert? I didn't understand that. I'm like, wait a sec. You're punting? You're giving the ball back to Justin Herbert, and you're banking on your defense. Now, I understand the vote of confidence in the defense, but you're giving the ball back to Justin Herbert, one of the better quarterbacks, and I think is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. That's just as bad as giving the ball back to Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady. So I just didn't understand this play. It's like, I couldn't believe this. It's like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Like, it just, I couldn't believe it. Like, the football team was on the Chargers 40, and all they needed was 7 more yards. at least maybe go for it and bank on your defense. I understand pinning them deep in their territory is a good idea, but you're giving the ball back to a very good quarterback who has been solid all game. He wasn't spectacular, but he has been solid, and he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league. And then eventually, Justin Herbert was able to orchestrate a great end of the game drive, as they didn't even need a touchdown or another score. The Chargers just eventually got the first down. They used up all of Washington's timeouts, and then poof, that was it. I couldn't believe that play. It's like, why are you giving the ball back to Justin Herbert? It makes zero sense. And it was very disappointing that happened for Washington. It's like, you should definitely know better than that. Ron, come on now. But it was what it was, and the Chargers got the win while Washington suffered their loss at home. So, unfortunately for Riverboat Ron, you have to take this week's Dum Dum of the Week award. Part 1.
That's so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
So yeah, I just closed out my Twitter space, unfortunately. Actually, no, it looks like it's still going on, but unfortunately, I just closed it out because I had to play the Dum Dum of the Week award clip. So now we gotta go with Dum Dum of the Week Part 2. And this guy surely deserves Dum Dum of the Week. This guy made the biggest mistake of his life on Sunday Night Football. It starts with Matt Nagy. This guy, first of all, decided to start Andy Dalton instead of Justin Fields. That's a no-no by itself. Second of all, Andy Dalton, bless his little heart, he tried his hardest. But unfortunately, he couldn't get any tutties, aka touchdowns. Poor Andy Dalton, he turned the ball over twice, once off of a fumble, and once off of an interception in the end zone. You want to know what Matt Nagy did? He left Andy Dalton in there, and he used Justin Fields as a Taysom Hill-like player. I am not kidding you. They used their rookie quarterback as a Taysom Hill-like player. Matt Nagy, can I ask you this one question? Why are you doing that to your rookie quarterback? I don't understand. That's not a good idea, my man. Like, he should have pulled Andy Dalton after those first 2 turnovers. Instead, he decided to roll with it, thinking that he was going to get something, but instead, he kept on getting nothing. It was so disappointing. It's like, why? Why are you leaving Andy Dalton in to demolish your team? No offense to Andy Dalton. He did all that he could. But honestly, it was just so disappointing. Like, Nagy should have pulled Dalton and just put in Justin Fields. It just made no sense. I know coaches are to each their own, and I know Andy Dalton is a veteran quarterback, but give Justin Fields the chance. Don't be a Anthony Lynn and mask a veteran quarterback for your rookie. It makes no sense. I'm not even a Bears fan. And he left him in after 2 turnovers. 2! After that fumble, that should have been the flashing lights warning that you should take out Andy Dalton, let Justin Fields ride with it the rest of the way. And he didn't even give Justin Fields garbage time. Mr. Matt Nagy, you are the main Dum Dum of the Week award. I understand what Riverboat Ron did was pretty questionable, but this right here takes the cake. Matt Nagy, you are the big Dum Dum of the Week award.
That's so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
And that, my friends, is all she wrote. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Without any further delay, it's time we get on out of here, because I got to get to work pretty soon. Yeah, dig? Thank you very much for tuning into this week's episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I definitely appreciate you. In the SoCal Supreme Sports Show chat room, Gina G says, Nagy is tripping. I agree. I think Nagy is tripping. And she also says she picked the Bengals over the Bears, as she's got Joe Burrow in her fantasy football lineup anyway. Good luck. I think it's possible that the Bengals win. But on that note, thank you all once again for tuning into the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Thank you to Gina G for popping in, as well as my boy Larry B for tuning in as well. I really appreciate you. If you're listening on the playback, I appreciate you. If you're listening via live, I appreciate you. If you're listening on the playback, I appreciate you. If you're listening in the wee hours of the morning, I appreciate you. If you're listening at all, I appreciate you. I will hopefully be back with a much more organized schedule next week. But until then, you all have yourselves a great weekend. Enjoy the SoCal sports. Enjoy sports in general. Enjoy life. And be kind to one another. Being kind to one another could go a long way. You have yourselves a great weekend. I'll see you on the other side. And remember, SoCal is for SoCal. Peace!